The airport was loud yet empty at the same time when the moment happened, the kind of place where thousands pass through every hour, but no one truly saw anyone else. A lonely seal sat staring at the departure board while snow battered the windows outside, and that was when a small presence changed everything. A little girl stood near him, small, quiet, and alone, and in that instant his carefully controlled world cracked open in a way money, power, and success never could. If you believe in kindness, quiet courage, and second chances, take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this only matter when they reach hearts still willing to feel. Ethan Cole was one of the most successful CEOs in the United States. His name carried weight in boardrooms and headlines, yet that night none of it mattered. Flights were delayed indefinitely, the storm had frozen the city, and the airport had become a place of waiting rather than movement. Ethan had nowhere urgent to be, despite what his calendar always claimed. His life had become a long stretch of terminals, meetings, and hotels since the loss of his wife years earlier. Faith had once guided him, but grief slowly pushed God to the background, replaced by work, numbers, and control. As hours passed, the airport lights dimmed and families huddled together under coats and blankets. Ethan noticed a girl sitting several seats away. She was too calm for someone alone. Her shoes were worn, her jacket thin for winter, and she clutched a small stuffed lamb close to her chest. Airport staff passed by assuming someone else was responsible. Everyone assumed someone else always was. Ethan tried to ignore the pull in his chest. He told himself it was not his place. He had learned long ago that involvement brought pain. Yet when the girl looked up at her with eyes far too steady for her age, something inside him stirred. She did not cry, she did not panic. She simply looked at him as if he was the answer to a question she had been holding for a long time. Time slowed as he realized no one else was coming for her. Her name was Grace, and she had been traveling with her mother, who had collapsed earlier from exhaustion and illness. She had been taken away by airport medics, leaving Grace behind in the chaos. No phone, no family nearby. Just a child waiting in faith that someone would notice. Ethan did what he had not done in years. He stayed. He spoke to staff, arranged updates, and refused to leave her side. He bought her food, wrapped his coat around her shoulders, and sat on the cold floor beside her instead of the leather chair he was used to. In that simple act, something sacred returned him, a sense of responsibility, not driven by obligation, but by compassion. As the night stretched on, Ethan learned pieces of her story. Her mother had been chasing work across states, trying to survive after losing everything. Grace had learned to be quiet, so she would not be a burden. That knowledge weighed heavily on Ethan, because he recognized himself in the silence and the way pain teaches people to shrink. When morning finally came, the storm eased and news arrived that Grace's mother would recover. Relief washed through Ethan, but it did not erase the truth he now carried. He could not unsee how easily a child could disappear in plain sight, how systems failed quietly, how kindness often arrived only when someone chose to stop moving. Ethan arranged care, accommodation, and transport without hesitation, but more importantly, he stayed present. He prayed for the first time in years, not asking for success, but for guidance. He felt something shift within him, as if God had been waiting patiently all along. In the weeks that followed, Ethan did not return to business as usual. He created programs for stranded families, emergency support for airport travelers, and funded shelters near major transit hubs. Grace and her mother stabilized, found safety, and began rebuilding. Their lives were no longer suspended in survival. For Ethan, the change was deeper. He stopped measuring his life only by outcomes and began measuring it by impact. He attended church again, not out of habit, but out of humility. He learned that leadership without love was hollow, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truths. Just before the ending, take a moment to comment below and share what you think. Ethan learned that night your voice matters, and your kindness might reach someone who needs it. Years later, Ethan would still remember that airport not as a place of delay, but as a moment he was found again, not by success, not by power, but by a little girl who reminded him that even the most lost souls can become a safe place for someone else. The airport night stretched on with a strange stillness that felt heavier than the delayed flights and flickering departure boards. Nathan Carter moved through the terminal with the little girl beside him, her small steps steady despite the exhaustion that weighed on her. He had spent his life leading companies through chaos, negotiating billion-dollar deals under pressure, yet nothing had prepared him for the quiet responsibility he felt now. The hum of the airport blended with distant announcements as snow battered the windows, and in that enclosed world he felt something unfamiliar settle into his chest, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with profit or power. As they waited near a closed gate, Nathan learned pieces of her story through gestures and documents rather than words. Her name was Emily, written carefully on a folded card inside her coat. Her mother's name was Sarah, a single parent who had come to the city for seasonal work and medical appointments, hoping to build something better. The blizzard had canceled buses, closed roads, and separated them in a matter of minutes. Emily had been told to wait, to trust that help would come. She had done exactly that, sitting alone while the world rushed past her. Nathan felt a tightening in his throat as he realized how close she had been to disappearing into the cracks of a busy place. Hours passed before airport staff located a contact number that finally connected. Sarah was alive, stranded at a nearby motel with no transport and no money left. Relief washed through Nathan, followed by a sharp awareness of how fragile this reunion still was. Roads were impassable, taxis unavailable, and shelters already full. He saw the fear in Emily's eyes when the reality of the night set in, and something inside him refused to allow another delay, another excuse. He had spent years walking away from human problems by delegating them. This time he stayed. Nathan arranged transportation through a private driver who owed him a favor, a decision that felt small compared to the impact it carried. As they drove through snow-buried streets, the city looked different to him. Towers he owned passed by like silent witnesses to a life he had built carefully, efficiently, and alone. Emily leaned against the seat, fighting sleep, trusting him without question. That trust unsettled him more than any boardroom challenge ever had. When they reached the motel, the reunion between mother and daughter unfolded quietly, almost reverently. Sarah's relief broke through her exhaustion as she held Emily close, tears soaking into a thin winter coat. Nathan stood back, hands in his pockets, unsure of where he belonged in that moment. He had expected gratitude, words, something that would close the experience neatly. Instead, there was only the raw reality of survival and the uncomfortable truth that he could walk away while their struggle would continue. That night changed him more than he admitted. In the days that followed, Nathan returned to his routine, but everything felt hollow. Meetings blurred together, numbers lost their meaning, and the glass walls of his office reflected a man he barely recognized. He thought about Emily waiting patiently, about Sarah holding her breath through uncertainty, and about how easily their lives could have fallen apart. For the first time in years, he questioned the distance he had placed between himself and the world. Nathan found Sarah and Emily again, not through headlines or charity events, but quietly. He helped secure stable housing, arranged medical care Sarah had postponed for years, and ensured Emily was enrolled in a good school. He did it without press releases or cameras, because this time the act was not about being seen. Each small step brought a strange sense of peace he had never felt after closing a deal. As weeks turned into months, Nathan began changing the way he lived. He funded programs at airports to protect unaccompanied minors during delays, created emergency funds for stranded families, and insisted on systems that treated people as individuals, not inconveniences. Employees noticed a shift. The CEO who once avoided eye contact now listened, asked questions, and stayed late to understand problems he used to ignore. Emily sent him a drawing one day, a simple picture of an airport with snow outside and two figures standing together under bright lights. Nathan stared at it longer than he cared to admit. It reminded him that being lost was not always about location. Sometimes it was about forgetting who you were before the world taught you to stop caring. Just before the story ends, take a moment and comment below what you think truly defines a second chance, because your words might inspire someone who feels lost right now. On a winter evening much like the one where everything began, Nathan stood at the same airport, watching families reunite, travelers rush, and strangers pass each other without seeing. He understood now that loneliness was not cured by success, but by connection. Somewhere between a delayed flight and a child's quiet courage, he had found his way back to something real. And this time, he did not walk away.